Okay, so Dr. Murillo, maybe you could start us since we don't really have a chair as of yet.
Yeah, I've been starting most of the subcommittees off, and then you usually elect a chair. So your first item will be selection of a committee chair, and then we'll go to public comments. So at this time, do I have a nomination for the chair of this committee? Yes.
I would like to nominate Robert Miller.
Okay, I have a nomination for the chair of the committee, Robert Miller. Do I have a second?
I'll second myself.
Okay, all right. I will do a roll call vote. I'm learning roll call is just so much safer these days. So Dr. Haslam.
I support Robert Miller.
Okay, trustee Gallardo
Yes.
and trustee Miller.
Yes.
All right, I'm turning the gavel over to trustee Miller.
Okay, I'll accept the gavel. I was going to insist that Peter take it, but since he just gave up a gavel, I think he probably would appreciate the break.
Absolutely.
So our next item, 2.2, is public comment. And I have been notified that we have a general comment from Justin Shores. And also he would like to comment on item 2.6. Is Mr. Shores on with us?
He is not present at this time.
Okay. Is there anybody else who's on who has a public comment?
Dr. Amy Smith has her hand raised.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Okay. Amy Smith, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good to see you all. I just wanted to reiterate what I said at the retreat meeting, that I'm just concerned that there is money, or I don't know if I said it then or at a follow-on meeting, but there is money available from the foundation and from other sources, and that there should be a consistent plan for maintenance of buildings. So it would just be very disturbing if failure to plan was not what was the purpose or the reason of having to go to a bond measure, because people are feeling very stretched already with maintaining their housing and the tax burdens in this area, and now inflation. And so having a plan and a method and a process to make sure that things are maintained over time is a wise way to protect the college and the interests of the college. And if, you know, I'm kind of concerned about this recent report of hiring, a big hiring of a whole bunch of new people. And I just hope that that is being done in a wise way and a financially sound way, and then, you know, with integrity. And I'm a little concerned about that, whether that's the case. I think some of the values might not be actually putting the university first or the college first. I think it might be following a fad, and not the best way to challenge racism, and not the best way to ensure competency and confidence and competence. But putting that to the side, it's the more general thing of making sure there's a pattern of responsible maintenance and protecting the infrastructure and the prior investments in the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other attendees who have a comment for us? Hearing none and seeing no.
There is someone by the name of Justin. I don't know.
Oh, yes.
The Shores.
Yeah, I was aware of him before, but he was not initially. So Mr. Shores, if you, I understand you would, you have a general comment and you also have a comment on item 2.6. If you would like, you can do both now, or you can wait until we get to item 2.6 for your second comment. Your choice.
Thank you. I can make them both now if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Very good. Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. So yeah, I don't know what the other commenters spoke on, but I just came in, so hopefully I'm not repeating anything. But I do hope you guys can reconsider the vaccine mandate for students and staff. A lot of court cases recently have gone against those mandates, and they've shown that if you read the court cases, it'd be really important for you guys to see that why they're saying no. It's not constitutional. And there's a lot of things that go into the fact that people right now are getting the disease even though they have been vaccinated. So we really need to not discriminate against these people who've made the medical choice, especially since there's so many things we don't know that's going to happen over the next year. A lot of countries are in their 4th dosage at this point, and they're still having, breakout cases and a lot of cases happening. So what's really scary is the coercion and the forcing of people to do these treatments without any testing or any long-term studies. So please reconsider that mandate for the students. I know that most of the people that are not vaccinated are minorities. So if you look at the demographics, it's really a very inconsistent with your policy of equity to keep all those people off campus. Also, going into the bond, I don't think we should be talking about a tax at all right now with the way that the school has been spending the money. 90% of your budget going to personnel is very, very poor business model. If anyone has ever ran a business, that is a number that is 20% higher than it should be, at least, for anyone to successfully run a business. And you guys have to remember, you are a business. Even though it's not your money you're spending, you should act like it. You should really protect that money. So I think what should be done before that is looking at what you're already spending our money on. Go back and really do an audit, because I think there's a lot of reckless spending, especially with the board last month saying no matter what the cost, they'll spend on equity. So you've spent millions of dollars on equity training for teachers, but have no metric for seeing how it will help. And you keep spending this money and you have no qualms about it. We need to look at that money that's being spent recklessly and really put it back into things that will be helpful. I'm sorry I didn't prepare the speech directly, but hopefully I got my point across there. It's, the public sees this. You guys are running a business and you're running it very poorly with the amount of money you're spending on this stuff. So please tighten up. Use this money like it's your own. I know none of you would be spending this money like this if it was your own money. It wouldn't make any sense to anyone. You'd have to make some cuts. You'd have to make some changes. You'd have to find ways to be frugal. So thank you so much for your time. And hopefully you guys can start looking at this at a better angle, one that makes more sense to people on the outside looking in. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shores. We will now move on. I should ask before we move on, is there anyone else who has a comment?
Lanny has his hand up.
You do. Mr. Evanstein, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Chair Miller, members of the committee, and President Murillo, thank you for your service. I wanted to make a comment at a later agenda item, but it was a little bit clear to me if I had to flag that in this part of under the public comments in order to comment later when you get to the amounts in terms of, so in any event, I'm just saying I would like to speak when you get to that aspect of the discussion in your agenda. What I would just say by way of introduction is that I would encourage the committee two things on a more general basis. One is I would look smaller rather than larger in terms of I think that that's just more feasible at that point, at this point in time. So I would say smaller rather than larger. I would also look at renovation rather than new buildings. And that's just because new buildings are so expensive in terms of they just are. They're $1,000, pardon me, they're $1,000 a square foot. So as I said, I think there's a lot to be said for rehabilitation. And then thirdly, and we'll talk about this more later, or at least that'll be part of the agenda, is that I'm very suspect of tearing down the existing physical education building in terms of, and that goes to the cost of new construction. I'm not saying that we shouldn't attempt, or that you all, the board and the community, shouldn't attempt a new phys ed building somewhere else on campus. But I think that tearing down buildings, and this would also go with the student services building, I'm not in favor of tearing down construction when new construction is $1,000 a square foot. If those facilities can be repurposed in some way, that's something that then becomes an asset. So anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about this more later in the meeting. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. And Lanny, can you tell me the agenda item, if you have it in front of you, that you
I
want?
think it was, unfortunately, I think it's 2.6 scenarios for consideration of a bond amount.
Okay,
Yes, it's 2.6.
okay. One more time, any other public comments before we proceed?
Dr. Haslam was waving his hand, and he's,
Yeah, just a procedural question. Normally, we don't respond to public comment, but it seems to me that in a committee, which is very different from the board, we should have a less formal and more robust dialogue, especially if someone says something that is either true or false, and we can respond to that. What is your view, Mr. Chairman?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was about to make a comment or ask a question of Lanny, and then I thought, oh no, we're not supposed to do that. So I don't know. Are you suggesting we should have a policy for our committee of responding when we feel the need?
Well, I think in the past, when we've had committees, that has been the practice, where there is more interaction. We have to limit it or we'll never get anywhere. But I think there is a spot here for comment to just simply clarify our individual views. But and as the chair, you'd need to keep us to be relatively brief in our commentary. But I did have a comment about Justin's contribution. I agree with him. I think there may be a false assumption to the notion that we don't consider the funds that we spend as carefully as if they were our own. I certainly do. I am very concerned that we are spending the public's money, and we must do that. That's what we're charged to do, but we need to do it very, very carefully. And the assumption that we're not careful is what I seek to dispel. I think that the conversations, if he listened to our commentary, the board meetings, would reveal that we are very serious stewards of public resources, and that we apply them very carefully. The second point is, we have not come to the conclusion that we're going to have a bond measure. That's something that, if we are to be responsible members of this board of trustees, we must look at. So it's premature to be critical, because there's nothing about which to be critical. And I agree with Amy, who says that there are other things that are important for us to spend money on. And it's absolutely true. So the case needs to be made. It needs to be made carefully. and we need to develop consensus about that case if we're to have a bond measure.
Let me ask Trustee Gallardo, I see you had your hand raised anyway. Do you agree with the idea of interacting with public commenters?
Oh, because our committee is specifically charged with Facilities and Community Relations Committee. This is something that the public has not had an opportunity to dialogue with the college. And so anything absent that, I think, would just continue to cause division that is unnecessary. And so this can be a venue by which the public who cares enough about the college to be here can participate. I think that it's appropriate because that's exactly why we were formed, is for that community relations.
I agree with you. And do you have comments to follow?
Yeah, just in, with regard to, Amy or Justin, one of them, with the vaccine mandate. And I think that what we're dealing here is, it goes back to that access. And so if access is now defined as online, well, then there's good reason why the community is saying, well, why are you spending my money on a facility bond, right? So I hear that loud and clear, because as a member of the California Community College system, I can take a class online anywhere. And so I can just go to Rate My Professor and find the best Algebra 1 teacher, the best history teacher. And so we're literally looking at right now as a value, the cost to what we're saying. And so we're believing that Santa Barbara City College is worth the community's investment, or there needs to be a little bit more, because if access is now defined as online, well, there's some phenomenal online professors across the state that are actually teaching online and not just letting the textbook play the tape, which all of us have seen, right? So with that regard, I do hear that message loud and clear. And I do think that there, while different people have different views on the financial stewardship of the money spent on the college, the reality is we are putting documents out that are telling the public that we're at 90% plus to salaries and benefits. A year, when the 2014 bond Measure S, at that point, we were 85 million was our budget, or our salaries. Now we're over 100 million. So we're really looking at significant increases in what we were looking at then compared to now. The contributions for STRS and PERS, all of that stuff. And I think in regard to the equity spending, what I hear from the public is I'm not hearing equity is unimportant or that there is no value in such initiatives, but what we are hearing is that the methods, right, the tactics by which this work is being accomplished, that there isn't any tied measurable, and I know there's qualitative, measures that you can say, yes, this is working, but the numbers that Kindred put out, where you're looking at, $500,000 here and there, that's where I think that it's more than a public perception. We're literally putting out this information saying this is what we're spending on. So that's, so it'll be good. It'll be good for the committee to hash these things out with the community because everybody deeply cares. I thank Lanny for being here. I actually printed up, Lanny, your letter that you sent us back last year in April. And so there's a lot for folks to contribute here and see how we can figure this thing out.
Thank you. Dr. Murillo, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to confirm for the board that this is the way the other subcommittees have been operating. It's more informally and in a more dialogue kind of manner. So
the other, well, I have one question about it. I mean, I agree with the idea of being able to respond to public commenters, but I'm wondering whether that also means that we're inviting the public to participate in our discussions, which is a different question. And maybe that's just something we'll play by ear. But I think we should, I agree, we should welcome the possibility of responding to public commenters and having a dialogue in that format.
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert, I would
Yes.
say that public comment needs to be kept to the agenda
Yes.
There is no end to public comment on really very interesting topics, but if it is not on our agenda, it is not to be discussed at this meeting.
Yes. And before we move on to the next item, I'd just like to say that I agree with Trustee Haslam's comments that we haven't made any decisions. We're just starting a process right now. We don't know whether it'll end up that we will actually put a bond measure forward. And we don't know what that bond measure would be. So we're starting the conversation now. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that. That's what we're doing here. This is step one. So the next item is a procedural item, establishment of meeting location and times. And I would just like to comment, I guess, that under our current apparent fourth or fifth wave, I think, although we would very much like to meet in person, I personally favor for the time being continuing to do this virtually. And I guess we can just review that meeting by meeting and see where we are. But I heard today that the Cottage Hospital emergency room is being swamped at the moment with new cases. And we're all reading how transmissible the Omicron is. So I don't see us being in a situation where we can go to a in-person meeting anytime soon. Veronica, you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to suggest that we do go to in-person or hybrid at least, for those that, and then the reason I say that is because, there's been a huge divide here. And when you continue, not you personally, Robert, but when one continues to operate behind these screens, you lose a lot of social registers and human contact. And the community has been separated for far too long now, that unless we start bringing people together in fellowship, in community, even, I mean, I remember the days we'd share in the meeting and we'd bring C's candy and pass it around. And I'm not suggesting people dip hands in candy. That's not what I'm suggesting, Robert. But what I'm saying is, it was that feeling of, you're a neighbor, you're a community member, come sit here with us. Let's talk about this because this is your college. And so I would be in favor of hybrid, as much as I like being home in this overcast, afternoon, and it's cozy. But I think it's important. I think it's important, especially for this committee that needs to really start building relationship and trust. And I don't know how you build relationship and trust when everybody's still sort of behind these screens, not feeling like they can participate. And I saw the difference during the board retreat, Robert and Peter, and I'm sure you guys did, and Amy was there. It was different. And the way people responded, it was different. It's easier to be snarky or kind of roll your eyes or ignore someone that you don't agree with. But when you're in front of them, you get that human connection because we were all meant to be in fellowship and connected. So that would be my case for hybrid. That way, those that still have fear and concern can operate in the context that is most suitable for them. But those that have built up the courage to get out and do what they've had to do in the last year can also do it. So it really meets everybody in a nice, happy medium.
In concept, Veronica, I agree with you. I would very much like to have face-to-face, but I'm very much against it at the moment. I see on our draft schedule of meetings, our next meeting is on January 31. On the upside to the Omicron situation, I've read that some experts think that it might burn out in January or February because there's going to be so many people infected. That's an unknown, but maybe in February or March we can consider having a face-to-face meeting.
So can I intervene for just a
Sure.
second? I think we're going to have to move the January 31st suggested date. We have, let's put it this way. We are supposed to attend the legislative conference on January 31st, and we wanted to meet with our legislators. that afternoon. So I know myself, Dr. Hasland, and Martha will be hopefully attending and meeting with our legislators that day. So we would like to request that we move that to another day.
Is there a day you have in mind that we could fill in?
Jasmine, I was gonna actually ask you to address that because you were looking, you're the wizard on calendars. So,
Yes, so a preferred date would be February 3rd. It's a Thursday.
Okay. Well, let me ask
Same week.
my other two. Is that a date you think would work, Dr. Murillo? Yourself?
yes.
Okay, so maybe I got to ask my other two committee members if, with that change, does the draft schedule look like it would be okay, knowing that we can change these dates if somebody has a conflict that arises or
Yeah.
for other reasons?
That makes sense to me. And in response to the previous comment about should we meet in person, I very much am an in-person kind of guy. I think there is a dynamic that changes. However, I'm not willing to do that when there's a risk, and the risk is significant. And so I say, at least for the foreseeable future, we should meet online.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with the February 3rd, and we'll be informed more when we actually start talking about item 2.6. But I reviewed the action items for the proposed Measure S, and so there are very tight timelines. And so depending on what ends up happening with item 2.6, we may have to revisit that because of the date timeframe for how these things move rather quickly.
Yeah.
well,
I-
and I think that leads us into 2.4, which is a discussion of the timeline. And maybe that's what you were referring to, Veronica, but if there are decisions we have to make, we don't want to hold off doing that and holding up the process if we could have a brief meeting to make a decision, whether it's selecting a consultant or proceeding with certain efforts. But maybe it would be best if, Dr. Murillo, did you want to present to us the timeline or your thinking on it? There is a document attached.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I've been requested as part of my goals to look at consideration of a general obligation bond for 2022 or make a recommendation to you for 2024. So I put together a timeline that kind of ends in April because from the perspective of having been involved in running general obligation bonds in the past, I think we have to do our homework, and I think some of the comments we've heard today are very appropriate before we make a decision to go or no go. I just call it go, no go. We either go in 2022 or we do the preparation to consider one in 2024. I am one of those people that if we're going to go for a general obligation bond, we have to run a solid campaign, and we have to do the right things. So this is based on kind of experience doing this work. And one of the things that I've noticed in being here and coming here is we haven't done a lot of, there's been a lot of work around sort of the facilities assessments. We haven't done an educational master plan of recent, and our strategic plans have not been heavily involved with our community in the last few years. So one of the things that I was recommending and we've been working on is a request for qualifications for doing a strategic plan that's engaging the community in that strategic plan, not only just the college community, the community that we live and work in. So That would be something that we think is really important. We also believe that doing a complete seismic assessment of the facilities is crucial, because a lot of these buildings were built in the 1960s where there is significant problems around seismic. So just making sure that we've done really due diligence around that. Facilities assessment, we have a lot of documents included today that Vice President Moss has given you in the past. Trustee Gallardo's referred to the binders and stuff. And so there's been a lot of work around facilities assessment, but bringing it into sort of a package that is really easy for the community to look at and understand, I think is important. And a total cost of ownership. That is something that there are pieces of, but as far as really indicating our total cost of ownership here at the college, we need to really put some dollars and cents to all of that. And as somebody said earlier, we have to invest in the facilities that this community's already put money into and invested in. So however we go at this, it's really important to be thoughtful about it. And then looking at campaign consultants and survey consultants, I highly recommend we do a survey before making a decision to move forward with a go or no go. Really strongly believe we need to be out in our community more, engaging the community, and ensuring that we bring to you a preliminary timeline for your feedback and the community's feedback on all of this. So that's kind of, we're looking at December, January, and I'm glad to see we've got quite a few people here today from our community. In January and February, looking to possibly hire consultants to do the work with the strategic planning. Start the strategic plan, making sure that we're going out. I've already told the trustees that I'd like to go to each of the trustee areas and engage the community in that planning. Also engage our service area, just really making sure that our community has a voice. February, March, create a small group to help guide in the conducting of a community survey. It's really important that we have input into doing that survey so that it can be as valid and reliable as possible. And I know there was one done in 2013-14, and we want to make sure that we are doing that well. And this committee could give us advice that if we wanted to, when we do the survey, on what kind of language we would use and testing things like amount. I think one of the really strong points that Lanny brought forward to me is amount matters greatly. And that's why when we were talking, I asked Vice President Moss to put together some scenarios that, I know last time you went for 288 million. And, it was like, need to keep it a little more around the 200 range. So I wanted to just give you some samples tonight of what some of the scenarios could look like. Nothing's firm. It's just, here's some thoughts. Here's some scenarios that you could look at as a committee and reflect on, and ask for other information from staff. We'd also like to finalize our seismic and facility assessments so that we're really thorough on this. I think planning is essential when you're looking at a general obligation bond. And here's the other piece that I think is really important. I don't really believe community colleges, or frankly, any higher education, are ever going to see what we call normal before COVID and the pandemic. What we're seeing right now is our students are enrolling heavily in our online programs. And what we found is that we really need to be flexible and understand what our students need. So our facilities situation may not really iron itself out for a while. And I think that needs to play into the decision that we make around this, because let's say, just for instance, I know a couple college districts right now, they're planning probably going to be 40% online and 60% in person. Do you still need the same square footage that you were thinking about before? Are the remodels that you were thinking about before really going to work under the new kind of scenarios? Like right now, we talk to students all the time that tell us we love online counseling. We don't need to come to student affairs anymore. But we also have a lot of students that do. So we've got to really think and design appropriately around this. And I don't think we're going to know how this is all going to settle out for a while. I've been polling my peers all morning about COVID and what they're thinking about for online and face-to-face. So I think those are things that we're really going to have discussion about the next few months. And again, I really think we need to get out and do an educational master plan. Dr. Scott is working on a strategic enrollment management plan, and that's really important for our college to think about. And then we will update the facilities master plan once we have the educational master plan complete. You haven't had an updated educational master plan, and I think it was 2013 or so. So, and the world's changed, and we really need to look at that. Anticipating by no later than April, we should make a determination whether we want to go or no go. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. I've actually run a bond campaign starting in July, but that's a brutal scenario for us to have to try to do. So if we're going to make a thoughtful decision, I would recommend we try to do something by no later than April.
So a couple things that come to mind. First of all, it seems like that we have to make a decision on the survey as soon as we can. I mean, that's kind of the predicate to everything else we're going to do. And I assume we're not going to be waiting for the strategic plan or education master plan before we do a survey. So is that something that we'd be in a position to decide at our February 3 meeting? Or do we need to make that decision even before February 3?
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Kindred. I was gonna say, we did a survey last year. We did a preliminary survey. Remember, I don't know who was on it, but Luz with Paul, myself, and I forget the trustees. We worked and we got the consultant and we got the results presented to us. What I see with this timeline, so I think this is all out of order. So the consideration of a general obligation bond timeline. So it's not a timeline when we look at the original timeline, which had 26 and the final steps were 22 very detailed steps of the action items that needed to occur and the dates. The reason I say this is out of order is, and I guess this goes back to Justin's comment, when we did the facilities assessment and we looked at land and use and looking at services, the second phase of that consultant work was $500,000 in addition to phase one. So you're talking almost $1 million that was spent back in 2014, 2013 at looking at all of these things. So I do think we need to update our educational master plan, all those things, and those are all part of the statute and we have to do them. But that had nothing to do with the bond. That just has to do with good college planning. So I think this is out of order. This timeline is not really a timeline. It's more of these are things that the college hasn't gotten done because we've been distracted on all sorts of other things, and they're things that need to get done. So I would put this timeline aside and then come up with an ongoing of the work under Robert's direction, Lindsay, of what has been going on with facilities. We have already a detailed report of all our facilities, the square footage. We have also the Prop 51 from the state. So we have all of those buildings and the money that we were allocated for that, which the P building was part of that. So I think that before we look at a bond, we need to really clean up our house here and get it in order and really present to the public what our plan is to get our structural deficit in line. I know you keep saying that it's complicated. We know it's complicated. And we also need to present to the public what it is that we're getting from the state from the Prop 51. So there's just a lot of things before we even get to hiring a bond consultant and all of that. When Lou Edwards did the polling or the survey for us, they back in 2014, they gave us, the results, but you guys, the rules of the game have changed. Back then, we wrote a narrative that went out to the public to approve on the ballot measure, saying really great things, whereas Santa Barbara City College is going to provide, be the education for high quality affordability. All of these things we put in there are no longer the case. We have now divided our community in half. And we have said, access is come to campus if you're vaccinated or go online. So this is an issue that we have to address with our community. And we're not going to be able, you're asking, it's kind of like when Jeff doesn't just go ask a donor for money, right? He has to cultivate that relationship. We have to go back to our community and cultivate this relationship. And we know now a lot more about COVID than we did a year ago. So is there something we can do to make this whole situation better? Yes, there is. And one thing we can do is get rid of the mandate and see what happens. Because back when we did this $85 million budget, we also had a lot more students. We had about 14,000 students enrolled back in 2014 when we did this. We have now 10 point, what was the last number we saw the last board meeting, 10.5 something students now. And our budget in employees is way higher. So we're financially in a not very good place until we clean this stuff up. So that would be my recommendation. I don't think this is a timeline for a bond. This is just sort of like things we need to get done, which is good. Separate them into what needs to get done in terms of facilities and education master plans, and then put together what would it look like. But we're out of order. And this conversation of a bond is really not appropriate right now because the community's not there yet with this.
Well, are you saying, Veronica, that we don't need a survey?
I think that we will need a survey, and we need to pick up on the survey that was done last year. And that survey had a very favorable outlook of City College, as it always has, because people love City College. That's the Venn diagram in the middle where everybody agrees, everybody loves the college and sees value in the college. Then the mandate came in. So now you're telling a household that if access means their 16 to 25-year-old is going to be online, well, why would I pay for a bond on my parcel tax when I can put that money towards my equity line so I can build my own at-home learning for my kid, right? So I think that that's where we're out of order. We've got to get our community on board with, so I don't think that a survey necessarily is appropriate right now, because people would be responding based on what they feel right now. But if we gave them time, yeah.
If we don't move forward with a survey, I don't see how we're going to even get to the point of making a sensible decision about a bond measure. I mean, that's my state of mind.
Well,
I don't think let me just finish, please. I don't think the survey you're talking about that was done in the last couple of years goes anywhere near addressing the kind of specifics that we need to address in terms of whether we have a bond and what that bond, how well would various options be received. I mean, I'm not a survey expert, but I assume we would test out various scenarios in the survey and to see what kind of reaction we get. And that's vital information for us to have. I mean, if we get overwhelming opposition to all of our suggested options, we'd have to think twice about proceeding with a bond measure. Trustee Haslam, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. I think this is an appropriate discussion. Veronica, I understand your point of view. It has validity, but it would be irresponsible of us if we didn't explore this. This does not mean that at the end of the line we're going to come to a positive conclusion about a bond measure, but it does seem to me that having the discussion, doing our homework, getting the data, conducting the survey, these are essential elements prior to making any positive decision about a bond.
I agree with that, Peter. I think we all agree on that. What I'm communicating is that it's out of order. So if you were to ask people right now about City College, people now have a different opinion because they no longer feel like they belong at Santa Barbara City College. They now feel like the door has been shut. So people
Yeah,
no
but-
longer feel like their children can go there. So
Veronica,
if
you
we
don't know that. You don't know
if-
that.
I know that from the hundreds of people I've spoken to, Peter. That's how I know that.
Yeah.
From the hundreds of people that I've spoken to. And I also know that from the parents in the not the 16 to 25 age range that have told me that they can no longer go to City College because of this. So I do know that, Peter, because I've been in the community, and actually I have met more people during this mandate season than I have in the last 9 years from being on the board at City College. So it's a beautiful thing. I do think we need a survey. I think it's out of order. I think we need to give people an opportunity to have correct information on where we stand on our budget. Right now, you'd be asking them, I mean, I'm looking at some of the questions that Lou Edwards put out for us, and they're good questions. I myself would not vote favorably for a bond right now as a parent, community member, teacher, educator, being asked these questions because of how I know that the college has now affected people with raising decisions. But if we get all of these things in order, then we put out the survey, then people are going to respond with a different light. Whereas right now they're saying, no, you've shut the door to City College. Why would I say that this is okay? So this has all been an experiment, right? Put the mandate in place. Let's see if we can get the numbers, right? The percentages aren't very good. It was something, right? And so now with the boosters coming up and all the doctors and all our clinics encouraging, folks to do what they need to do, we're still not at the numbers that we hoped, right? So why not try, get rid of the mandate for 6 months, see what happens. If it still is not a go, then, because to me, we already got vaccinated, the people we thought were going to get vaccinated. We can't push this down anymore, right? But what we are doing is we're closing the door to people that need our services.
It sounds
And
to
I'd
me,
like us to be able to have a meeting where the community like this can continue to come, they can build a relationship with us so that they can see value in what we have to offer. Because we want this to be a bond that everyone's going to get behind, right? We want anything we do to be the majority of the community saying, yes, we get behind this. But right now, we have shut the door on a lot of people. And so we need to go back and try something different.
and it sounds to me like, Veronica, you are, by your comments, shutting the door on any bond measure this year. Because you just, let me finish now, please. Because I heard you just say, we need to get rid of the mandate for 6 months and then see where we are. Well, you can't possibly wait 6 months to see where we are under not having a mandate. And I don't think there's any possibility we're going to give up a mandate anytime soon. So you are essentially telling us that we can't get to a bond measure this year.
Well, the bond measure planning would put us in the ballot for 2022, not for 20 or 2024. Is that what I heard from Kindred, right? We don't have the enrollment. We don't have the fiscal stability. We don't have the access. We don't have the structural deficit. There's a lot of things that are out of line here. And that's what the community is saying. Let's get our house in order. And I went back and I read all the literature from the Measure S that was defeated. I read all of that. The same claims hold true today. So if we can get ahead of that and just provide the public with all of the information demonstrating this is how we have our facilities, our fiscal, our access, everything in order so that the community can then make a good assessment. Yes, that's right. But right now, the reality is we are no longer the same college we were back in 2014. So if the bond was defeated in 2014, now back then, and Peter knew because he was on the board, I knew it was not going to pass. So I voted for it because I said, I'm going to support it because what do I know? But my feeling from talking to people was this thing is not going to pass. What I'm hearing now in 2021 compared to 2014 is that and more. So when you look at all of the documents of our budget, our finances, everything, our finances, everything's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. We need to address that, and we need to give the public the confidence that we know what we're doing with our money. And right now they don't have the confidence.
Well, I think we need to test your thoughts on that. I know you've said you talked to hundreds of people in the community and you have formed an opinion about what the public thinks, but I cannot take that information and make a decision on it. I need to see survey done by a professional outfit that asks people across section of the people in our district what they think. That's what we need to have.
I agree with that. I just think we need to do it after we've allowed the public to come talk with us.
Okay.
There's a big relationship piece missing here. And
that
that's
means-
the part that people are going to get more comfortable with us. They're going to be able to trust us once we are able to talk with them. And so I agree, we need a survey.
Yeah.
That is not a disagreement. It's the timeline. And so I want to keep reminding you guys there, we need to have things in order. And if you have things out of order, this thing's not, it's gonna fall apart.
Do you agree then that we need to do a survey in no later than February or March?
I would push it back because if you're waiting, if for the people that are afraid of Omicron in this, right? So you need to let those emotions play out. So I also read through the last bonds that failed 2 years ago, and it was done by the Public Policy Institute. And so I read all that literature. And so back then people were concerned with the economy, they were concerned with all these other things. Well, if the media, the community for over a year now, almost 2 years now, every day is telling people that they're gonna die, every day telling people that they should be afraid, that they should be in quarantine, that they can't open up the schools, that they need to stay home, that they can't meet. How do you reverse the media and the telling people that over and over and over again, and that tape playing in people's head to all of a sudden, hey, welcome to City College, give us $200 million, take the survey and tell us how you feel. They feel the fear and anxiety and depression that people are projecting. So if we push this thing out, we allow people to come on campus, we give them the services they need, the relationship building, the community, the students have the opportunity to fellowship. I was also rereading the reports that Ben Partee and Jack Freelander did back then on co-curricular activities. We had a list of all the benefits to mental health, to co-curricular activities. If we take the spring to do that, then we give a survey, I don't know, maybe in June, in May, then the community feels, okay, I came to City College, I know these folks, I spoke, they heard me, we dialogued, and that's how you build a relationship with people. So I don't know what that makes you think, but that's what.
Well, that means we won't have, if we were to go in that sequence, we would be foreclosing the possibility of a bond measure in 2022. And I think we can do it, and I think we can do all the things that you're talking about in terms of engaging in the community. We would obviously be doing that throughout the year leading up to the bond measure if we decide to go ahead with the bond measure. So I agree completely. We have to have the engagement that you are discussing. But before we get there, we have to make some decisions. And that's why we need to have a survey. Trustee Haslam, you have something to say?
I'm wondering, Dr. Murillo, if I think essentially what Veronica is suggesting is that the next motion be to adjourn this meeting. I wonder if you'd care to comment on what you've heard.
Well, there's some pieces that I think Trustee Gallardo is really right about, is that we need to get our house in order. And that's part of the reason that I've laid out this the way I did, because I feel like we need to be engaging our community through strategic planning to hear what they say they need from us. That seems to be getting lost in this conversation, because that's exactly why I have it on there, is about engaging in the community and really having some good conversation with our community. I haven't listed the financial position of the college on this, because that's something I think the Finance Committee is working on. And when you've lost $5 million because you are not spending it off your budget, of course, your personnel and benefits costs are going to be higher because your budget has totally changed and you've gotten a lot of the spending. I mean, we don't have any money in our budgets for professional development unless somebody goes out and gets a grant. So yeah, your personnel costs are going to be higher when you've taken out everything else of the budget, like which has happened in the last couple of years. And I think that is what Trustee Croninger and Vice President Moss have been trying to say to us, is we're not living with a real budget right now because of COVID. And so it's going to take a little bit of time and effort to unwind that. And this college is not falling apart financially. It needs to do some solid work, which is what we're doing. And to characterize it as falling apart is really concerning to me. Because you have money in other funds, you have money in reserves, and right now the personnel costs are jacked up because of the COVID lack of expenditures of discretionary funding. And that's why it looks as strange as it does. So I'm unwinding that. I've been here 3 months and I'm not going to unwind it all in 3 months.
How, Dr. Maria, how far out can we go to do a survey and still be able to make a decision in time to have a successful bond measure? And I say successful bond measure, which is going to require a lot of the things that Trustee Gallardo is talking about, engaging with the community, talking to the community, sharing our concerns, and we have to make a case for whatever bond components that we decide on. How long can we wait to do that?
I just told you, I've actually done it from starting on July 1 and going to November. It's hard and it's brutal doing that. That's why I'm recommending really starting to engage the community now so we know how the community feels about the college. You can wait until that time frame. Because as Trustee Gallardo noted, there's a lot of steps when we get to the final, like we're going to go on a campaign. I mean, there's a lot of detailed steps. Right now, we're just trying to get to a place where we're going to answer the question, do we have a compelling case? And will the community support that compelling case? That's kind of where I'm trying to get to. So I wouldn't go much further than May. Or June, if at all possible. And the other part is that we really want the support of our faculty and staff if we go out for this, because they are members of the community. And it makes a lot of difference when you're doing a general obligation bond. So we would want to get them involved before they leave in May for the summer. So that's the other, I'm being encouraged by the faculty to really think about, getting it done as quickly as possible. But I'm open to whatever timeframes the board wants to go with. I mean, I've done it both ways, very quickly, and I've also done it very thoughtfully planned out.
So our baseline survey was conducted in April 2014, and we interviewed 501 folks with an error margin of plus or minus 4.4% points. Then we had a final survey that was then presented to us in May. So if you're thinking baseline, that's not February, March, that's April. And what I'm suggesting is push it out 2 months from there, because then you would have given a whole semester. I still say, get rid of this mandate and just see. Do you get more students? Does our enrollment go up? Does public perception change? Do people still feel the same about the college? Then basically what you're doing is you're giving the public back the Santa Barbara City College that they knew. The Santa Barbara City College from 2014 when Measure S was going to be on the ballot. Then you see what you get. If it's favorable, enrollment goes up, then great. And I'm not saying you get rid of, any safety precautions or you become completely negligent, but basically there's a lot that we've learned. Amy, who's still here, knows a lot. I'm sure she can be on the community advisory committee on how you can do this safely, along with other amazing folks in the community that we've all met. Someone like Amy has a lot of stake in the game. She's got kids, she's been invested, she showed up at our meeting, she has no business being here. I'm going to worry about Santa Barbara City College when Amy stops caring about Santa Barbara City College. Because right now she cares enough to say, I want to be a part, I want to be involved, I want to help this, make this an accessible college to everyone. So if we do that, then I think we're going to have a good shot at doing this. Because remember, Robert, I don't know if you saw the surveys, and again, like Kindred said, I do have binders and binders, but back then we had a shoe in. This thing was supposed to pass. All our polling showed it was supposed to pass, the baseline showed, the final, everything, and then it failed. And we're in a much worse position now because we've actually now told the community that their children cannot come here. And I want to change that.
Okay. Well,
I suggest we move the agenda or we will be here until midnight.
I guess we're not going to, I still firmly believe we need to move on a survey as soon as we can. And perhaps that we help decide that by conversations we have with potential consultants. I mean, they're the experts in this. And what do they tell us? And how soon do we need to do it? But I am not convinced that we can wait until April or May even and still have time to put together a successful bond measure. I guess I have enough background and experience in politics to know that you need time. And between now and November is a short amount of time to do what we're talking about, if we decide to do it. But let's move on to the next item, which is 12.5. And 12.5 is, I'm not sure what our discussion here is. I guess I would just comment that attached to item 2.5 are 4 meaty documents. And my guess is in a lot of colleges, when they talk about doing a bond measure, they don't have the kind of information that we already have. Some of the information may not be as up to date as we would like, but we have a facilities master plan that was presented to us in 2019. We have very detailed information done through the Fusion report in 2016 and summaries of that information. So we have a lot of data. It may not be absolutely the best, perfect data, but we have the data, I think, that we need to be able to put together some draft scenarios.
The only thing we're recommending is taking all of this data, and because there's a ton of data, it's amazing, to actually put it into a more digestible format just for helping to talk through some of our facility needs.
And I think that's a great idea. I think that would be very helpful to our decision making.
Yeah, I would agree. I think right now it is so massive that comprehension is difficult.
That's what I said when I met with Lindsay, and she went over this whole thing with me, and I'm like, wow, you've got everything here. We just need to kind of like put it into a format that is digestible for our community to really be able to say, oh, okay, because nobody wants to go through all these documents, except the board members, which I appreciate that you do. But it's really a tough bunch of documents to go through.
And I think that really leads us to agenda item 2.6, which is really 3 scenarios. And unless we have something else to talk about in terms of those reports, I guess I'd like to hear what was the process, Dr. Murillo, for coming up with the 3 drafts. And when we finish that quick conversation, I'm going to turn to Lanny Ebenstein. I know who's got a comment he wants to make before we get into the meat of 2.6.
I think you have a comment with Dr. Smith too. She's got her hand up, just so you know.
But Dr. Muir, if you could just tell us before we go to those comments, what was the process to develop the three drafts?
So what I wanted to do was I asked Vice President Moss to go through all of the documents in the prior one, and we talked through what are the biggest needs for the college right now. Based on the information we have, and again, I want a seismic survey done on all the facilities just to make sure we're in really good stead on this. But knowing that the gymnasium has some seismic problems, and we know that, and we put it at a top of a list because we have to do something, whether it's a retrofit or whether it's a new gymnasium. We cannot just ignore it. So we put the items that we felt were the highest need. And in talking with several members of the community, and I would note that Lanny was one of them, noted to me that the amount of the bond would really be important. That if we stayed under 200,000, that would probably be a lot better for the community to absorb. So what I did was I asked Vice President Moss to put 3 scenarios together for just starting conversation purposes. Let's see what our real needs are, which I've already heard the number, and I can probably verify it. It's probably over 300 million. But if you were in this range, could we get done a good 5 to 7 year building program at Santa Barbara City College and take care of most of the big issues that need to be taken care of? And that's how these scenarios evolved. So we went them kind of down a step at a time, just for your conversation today. There's nothing hard and fast about these. It's just some thoughts about what a $300 million bond would look like, what a $250 million bond would look like, and what a $200 million bond would look like. And if the board gives us direction to take it down further, that will be our next step.
Okay, and one final comment for me before we go to the comments from Dr. Smith and Mr. Ebenstein, is that I noticed that part of the totals, the 250, the 200, the 250, and the 300 million, in each of those, there's 43 million that comes from the state as part of their contribution to the phys ed building and to the physical science building. So I'm assuming that if we actually did a bond based on getting one of these, it would be 43 million less. So I really calculated these as closer to 160, 200, and 250, but
okay.
I could be.
And that's what the projected number is right now for the state funding that we currently know about.
Okay. So Lanny, you have some comments on this side.
Great, thank you. Chair Miller, members of the committee, President Murillo. Again, thank you for your service and your time. I've appreciated the conversation at this point. These are very hard decisions. And I do think things have changed since 2014 in terms of, for what it's worth, at the time, those were the most prosperous year. That was the most prosperous year of the Obama presidency. It's pre-COVID, pre some issues at Santa Barbara City College. And a poll was done in the spring. 70% said they'd support it. And a very small campaign was run against it. It only got 50%. And I mean, it really was 50%. It was less than 51%. It was 50.2 or something like that. 50.2 or 50.4. Anyway, so that's concerning. And let me just say, sort of give you my thought in terms of as a thought to consider. And again, I recognize we're at the beginning of a process that may come up with something entirely different, or says, let's go in 2024, or, as I said, but as a thought. Okay. Again, I want to talk about the phys ed building. And if there's seismic issues, that's a big deal. And I understand that. But I guess here's my point is that it costs tens of millions of dollars to build that structure, and to tear the existing structure down. I'm just, as I said, I'm not against, I'm for, so let me say this, I'm for $53 million, 0.9, and the state kicking in 31.9 for a new PE building. But in large part because of the state funding. I think it's wise, fiscally prudent. My feeling is you don't have to tear down the existing one. We've talked before with some of you about putting it up on the main part of campus adjacent to the Garvin Theater area and some of the parking lots in there. I think with autonomous vehicles, transportation is going to change immeasurably. I don't think we're going to need as many parking lots in the future as we have now. Save swing space if you build it somewhere else. Then the other thing is, what if in the future our community has said for years we need a performing arts facility on the downtown in the waterfront area that could seat several thousand people? Could this be repurposed for the existing PE building for a huge community asset also to City College? So as I said, I'm just serious about that in terms of it's a big asset. And to say we're going to tear it down and do swing space for years and then rebuild something there in the flood zone with global warming, I'm dubious. Okay, so as I said, I'm for the 53 million, but I'm not for saying right now that's the location. Okay, on the new student services building, the $45 million estimated, I'm very dubious of that. I had my shot for COVID today at City College and I paced out, I got to measure it, but it's only about a 20,000 square foot building approximately is what I counted between the two school floors. It might be up, maybe it's 22 or 24, but, and that's just a ballpark, but $45 million, that's a lot for 20,000 square foot building. The case hasn't been made to me that's something you need to move forward with. There's no match from the state on that. And then the other one is, and this is my final comment, is the Wake Center in terms of the proposed $30 million or more for 17 or 16,000 square feet there with no state match. That's what sunk the last bond. So I guess this would be my initial thought to you. On that $204 million figure, if you take out a new student services building and you take out the Wake Center, that stuff, that leaves $116 million. That's infrastructure and safety, that's children's center renovation, that's a new physical science building that gets a state match, and it's a new physical PE building somewhere. I think that would be a reasonable amount that I believe the community would support. And I'm less concerned about leaving money on the table than I am concerned about putting forward a bond that people would support, that does a ton of good for the college, that there can be consensus on. And then 10 years from now, another board and another administration, after many issues have been resolved on distance learning and remote instruction and those things that I think could be worked out. So in any event, I wanted to put out those thoughts. And again, those are preliminary and initial. I'll undoubtedly be corresponding further with the board on these subjects, but it's something that was my thought, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Smith, do you have comments for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's not just the parents and the community members, but it's also the faculty that feel marginalized by the mandate policy and not really heard. And even the survey that was sent to students about online learning never mentioned the fact, is this because it's a voluntary or an option, or because it's something you're forced into? So the elephant in the room about, why, or, it's not the only factor, but, there's a very different thing is if you're doing it because it's an option and because you're forced into that position. And so I just don't think people are really aware of the level of anger beneath the surface that many faculty have talked to me about how they don't feel represented by the faculty senate, they don't feel heard, they don't feel that if they speak, they are respected or encouraged to, and that there could be consequences even for speaking out. So people feel intimidated into silence, but then that anger is under the surface, and it's not able to bring out the concerns and then solve the problems for everybody. And then so it's not only alienating to community members, but also some of your own staff and faculty. And I see what happened in Virginia. I don't know if you saw how this very unknown governor candidate won over a popular former governor. And there's a tremendous amount of anger in society over this, these divisive issues that are being pushed onto people, and they don't feel they're welcome to say their side and have a reasonable conversation. So I know this isn't fortunate that we're faced with this at this time, and you guys didn't plan for that. And I do have compassion for being in this situation of leadership at such a time. It's not fun and easy, but I think trying to find ways forward that do encourage people to have a voice, and that their voice is respected, and that people's different ways of feeling about it matter, instead of just, having the power to do something despite alienating a good chunk. I think that would help bring the community together and make it more easy for people to want to contribute more and support the college more, such as in a bond measure. So,
Dr. Haslam, Trustee Gallardo, do you have comments on this item, on the three draft proposals that were presented, or on the comments?
On item 2.6?
Yes.
Yeah, I thank you, Lanny, and thank you, Amy, for your comments. When Lanny was reading those dollar amounts, I'm surprised that the Wade campus, for example, is.
Somebody needs to mute. Okay.
No problem. The Wade campus on our published documents has a estimated cost of 30 million. But back in 2014, it had an estimated cost of 40 million. So if in 2014 we thought it was going to cost 40 million, in construction costs have significantly gone up, I think that number is understated.
I think we were looking at just the replacing the portables at this point. I don't know. I wasn't here in the previous one to the level and detail that they went to.
Well, I think that it, the campus center, as we know, the beloved campus center was supposed to cost much less. And then we ended up having to send that money back to the state because it ended up costing a lot more. So I would recommend, Kindred, and I can help you. I didn't volunteer to chair this committee because I'm running two schools. However, I can be the behind the scenes co-chair and I can help you, but we really need to look at these numbers. The polling was done on a threshold of up to $310 million back in 2014. And again, that was only 500 people. I think between Amy and all the people that have emailed us, I think if we sent out a survey right now, we would get more than 500 people. So I would like to see a survey of more than 500. I don't know how we get a balanced opinion of folks when it's randomly selected, but we easily have 500 people that think like Amy, which is good, right? Because people should think different. That is important. We should have discussion and we should not have group thinking. But there is a disconnect between the numbers that are published and the numbers that we have from the proposed projects from back of 2014. So I'd like to get that cleaned up. But I still think that I would not be in favor of putting anything on a 2022 bond. If we're going to consider anything, I think it's going to be all the way up until 2024. And I agree with Lanny that smaller is better. We need some time to clean this up. And I think that the 2022 election is going to be something like Virginia. So there's a lot of engaged people. And so we want people engaged on behalf of the college, right? We want to get politics and identity things out, and we want to just focus on our mission and access. And I'm confident we can get there. As I said, I've met a lot of folks like Amy now, and they love this college. So that gives me hope, and I want to help. So I think next steps for me are, I'd love to work with you, Kindred, to help really look through all of this stuff. I know it's a lot of information, but I actually can read it and I love it. And these numbers are in my brain. And I look forward to a survey, perhaps later spring, summer, get rid of the mandate. And then let's talk about a small bond once we get our house in order.
Dr. Haslam, do you have anything to add?
Well, we strayed from what we were talking about, essentially scenarios for consideration of a bond measure. And maybe we haven't, I don't know. But it seems to me that the mandate is not on our agenda, and we have discussed it before. We came to a laborious decision. Initially, I was on the side of opposing a mandate, but supporting getting vaccines. When we learned that the absence of a mandate was not favorably disposed toward people getting vaccines, then we closed the debate. We had a vote, and the mandate is our campus policy. We hope it's the right policy, but it isn't a topic that I would want to discuss under these conditions of dealing with facilities and the possibility of a bond measure. It's certainly one issue that would ultimately have to be taken into account. And when people are angry with us, that doesn't help us. And we want to make sure that they're angry for the right reason, not for assumptions. So I think it is much too early to make a decision to terminate our consideration for a bond. I think it is still under consideration. It should be under consideration. We need a survey to help us determine whether we are realistic or whether we are, once again, engaged in wishful thinking.
I agree. I don't think this is the place for us to be debating. I mean, I've got lots I could say on the mandate and the COVID issues, but this is not the time and the place, I don't think, to address them. We're here to talk about facilities, and I understand that Trustee Gallardo seems to believe we have to get rid of the mandate before we can fully consider the bond measure. I don't fully understand that, but I understand that's your position, Veronica. Do we
So
have anything else any other
the-
comments concerning the item?
Yeah, so my only comment, so this is a Facilities and Community Relations Committee. And so I know you're smart, Robert, and I know you do your homework and your research. So I think that in time, I'm hopeful that you are going to see the bridge connection between asking the community to add a tax to their parcel tax. And remember, you live in Goleta, so you probably only have the secondary bonds on your property. But if you live in Santa Barbara, I think there's 7 or 9 bonds on our property taxes right now, because we have all of the elementary ones from Santa Barbara, and you probably have the Goleta ones, but Santa Barbara's had a lot of elementary, a lot of secondary, and the only city college we have is Measure V. So they do work hand in hand, because people in the community can no longer access a service the way they once did, because we have now divided our community. So what I am hopeful is that we can move away from all of this divisiveness. And I sent Kindred an email about something that Kevin Walters was doing at Santa Maria, right? He got creative and he opened up the campus, and faculty find they were staying home, and kids were able to Zoom and do their thing on campus, use the facilities. Okay. Now, Kindred, your comment at the time was, well, what works for one college doesn't work for another, right? But then yet this morning you said you were asking your colleagues around the state what they were doing. So everybody thinks different. For Santa Barbara, I want us to come together, and I want us to get behind this college, and people want to, but we have now divided the community, and that is true. I have heard it over and over and over again. And if we're going to move forward on asking people to pay for a facility that they can't access, they're going to say no. So I want us to open up the campus, get rid of this mandate so that they feel like this college is a part of them, their family, their neighbors all over again. So it is part of it, Robert. Money's emotional, and you're asking people, whether it's 70 million, 200 million, you're asking them to give money to Santa Barbara City College. Right now, they don't feel like they have access to that mission. So let's stop the divisiveness and let's just bring these people closer to us, get to talk with them, get to know them, understand their issues, and have a real conversation, because we haven't given the community that opportunity.
But we really have
With
a
all,
division.
I'm sorry, Peter, with all due respect, Veronica, I don't agree with your assessment of what you think the community thinks. I do not agree with your assessment, but we can test that. We can test that, and that's called doing a survey. So we can find out, and we can find out from the survey what the community's concerns are, and we can address that in community engagement. So I agree with you completely on the need to have community engagement, to talk to the public and see what their concerns are about the college. But I don't agree. I do not agree that we have the problem that you are claiming we have. But you could be right and I could be wrong. That's why we do a survey. Dr.
So
Hassler.
I was right in 2014 when the bond failed.
Yeah.
And so in my conversations with the community now are similar. You're always going to have the folks that don't want any taxes, right? So that's valid, that's respected. But what we're hearing from the community now, and Amy's one of them, she's here. So I'm not projecting my opinion to you, Robert. I've never given you my position or my personal belief on vaccines. So you don't know what my personal health beliefs are on that. What I'm communicating is the hours of time that I have spent listening to the community from Carpinteria, actually all the way to Santa Maria for some reason, even though that's not in our district. And so it's not an opinion. I don't serve on this board to give you my opinion. I serve on this board as an elected official to represent the people of Santa Barbara on behalf of the college and our mission. So that is still my heart. My heart is that we would get party politics out of this situation, look at how this is affecting our community, and bring people together so that they can support the much needed facility renovations in whatever way that looks like. If it's a smaller bond with some increased section for technology, because now we're going to have a lot of online, whatever that looks like, we need to do that. And so for you to say that Amy Smith doesn't represent the community, I've actually met hundreds of people that I've met through people like Amy, and they are part of the community and they have to be heard, and their voice needs to equal just as much as the other people you agree with, Robert. And that's important, because we are not in like the mode of group thinking, party thinking, echo chamber. We're in the business of critical thinking, of academia, where we can debate, we can talk, and we can also, one thing that's missing is humility. Have the humility to say, yes, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing for the community, even if my party politics don't align with it. And that's why Amy keeps coming back. She keeps coming back because she wants this college to work, not only for her. She obviously has the intellectual ability to homeschool her kids if she had to, but she wants this to work for the families that I work for, which I've gone to talk to her about that. And I admire, because she's showing up here knowing that her kids are going to be okay because she's educated, her husband's educated, but she knows that the families that I work for don't have the same opportunity to homeschool their kids. So that is admirable. And I thank Amy and members of the community for having that heart to get behind Santa Barbara City College and to say, this community is worth fighting for because it's going to be here long before we are. So that's where it is. So it's not my opinion, Robert. It is truly the heart that I've heard from the community that I admire and I respect.
I think
Dr.
we're
Hassel.
getting to the point of sort of repeating ourselves.
Yeah.
And I would urge that we move on the agenda.
We have one agenda item left, and I don't know what there is.
There is a hand up.
Yeah, I see that. Just one moment, please.
So first, I want to let you know you do have a hand up. The last item was requested by Kate, who was on this committee until you had your reorganization meeting. So just a heads up on that. She had wanted to see the data regarding the student, and our institutional researcher Z actually gave us the heat map so we could really look, like all over and look where the students are coming from. So we're gonna bring back the next time we meet a little more detailed report, just so you can get a better picture of this.
I think it's very interesting data. I was trying to look at the attachment, but it was not interactive, so I couldn't really see some of the things I wanted to see, but Z's done some really good work, and I think it can be very helpful to us. I do see that Maria Kestner has her hand up, so we will ask her to make any comments at this time.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes, not real loud, but
okay, I'll try and speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I agree with your mandate, right? What really bothers me at this point, and I have my youngest daughter, I have 3 daughters. The middle one is disabled. I've been here before. I mean, you should recognize my name at this point. My youngest one is a sophomore in college. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that I agree with your mandates. What really is very much a concern, and which needs to really reach within the leadership of universities today, is that this entire debate, there hasn't been a debate. There's been censorship. There has been violations of legal processes. There has been enormous scientific and dissent in the medical and scientific communities. There has been consensus in the bureaucratic communities, which is a totally different ballgame. And what concerns me is there is no critical thinking. The universities are not teaching our young people critical thinking anymore. There is no debate allowed. You bring in other medical perspectives, of legal perspectives, and it's shut down. And so if I'm going to look at a bond measure today, I'm going to look at a university or a city college and say, do they have rigorous scientific and legal debate about the issues? Is this allowed? Are people allowed to critically think and critically look outside the corporate media and actually connect some dots? And as a legal advocate for myself, for my daughter, I am a fact finder. I have to call out the county supervisors on a weekly basis that they're violating our rights. And it's just, and I'm doing it to set a track record that I'm just looking at what they're doing and what they're factually getting wrong. And it happens across all these boards. It happens at the Santa Barbara Unified School District. It happens at the Santa Barbara City College. It happens at the county board supervisor meetings. And it's just stunning how they all have the exact same approach, and how dissent is not allowed, and how there is unanimous consent among bureaucrats, but there is, Amy and I are exposed to literally hundreds and hundreds of articles from the scientific community, from the legal community, every day. I can't even keep up anymore. I just printed a 46-page case that has been brought in front of the International Criminal Court in my home country, the Netherlands. And it's 46 pages. I'm going to read it. And it is on this very topic of the way the pandemic has been handled. And so if you want to pass a bond measure and you really think that the mandates have nothing to do with it, then there is a real disconnect between the people that are sitting on these boards and what is really happening in the community. I would have helped several people getting religious exemptions for their work, and 2 I have been successful with, and 1 I'm still working on, and I'm trying to get her legal representation. But it's like, these are people in the Hispanic community. These are people that need help. These are your minorities that you always keep raving about, that you are bringing equity, to their communities. And basically you're not. You're destroying all of society. And the people that hurt the most are the people that, that are already economically at the bottom of the barrel. And I don't see myself voting for any bond measure for any public school at this point. And I've never had a problem other than with my disabled daughter. With the public school system, my other two daughters did quite well. But at this point, this is becoming a huge problem, a huge problem. And so I guess that's all I have to say for today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Trustees Haslund, Gallardo, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, thank you.
I think that the comment that has been repeated often bears one last shot. There's a difference if we think in terms of critical thinking. There's a difference between having a viewpoint supported by data and having a viewpoint that requires that data to inform you as to what reality really is. The request for the survey is such an instrument. We need to be sure that it measures accurately. And I'm the first to admit that survey instruments can be crafted in such a way to give a jaundiced view one way or the other. Please be assured that this is one trustee who absolutely and adamantly wants to see a survey that is reflection of reality in our community college district.
Amen. I would agree. I've been involved in a lot of surveys myself long before I joined the board, and I'm well aware of the deficiencies of surveys and polling. And I'm well aware that there are people who know how to conduct them and obtain an accurate reflection of what the public is thinking. And there are those who aren't as good at it. So hopefully we will find a good survey consultant who will give us accurate data. With that, I'm going to, unless Dr. Murillo, do you have anything you wish to
No,
add?
I think that's really important. And I think that's why we would like to go out with an RFP and have a committee of community and board members do the interviews. Because I've seen some really bad surveys and I've seen some very accurate predictions. And it's partly about the person or the group that we bring in. And it's partly about how we are able to say what we really need, I think. So I really agree with getting the right people.
Okay. Well, I wish everybody happy holidays.
I have a question for Kendra. Kendra, do you have access to the community surveys that we paid for last year?
I have access to the one that was sent out. I think somebody just sent it to me the other day, the one that was in 2020. Is that the one you're referring to?
It's the community survey. Yeah, we hired a consultant and
True
they
North.
went out. Yeah, and so that's why Luz recommended them because they worked with Galita. So that one, that's a nice baseline, and then you can see what, anyway, it'd be good to review that with the entire board, with the community.
I'll send it out to the entire board and then we'll put it on our next agenda too. So somebody sent it to me the other day. I was unaware of it.
This was going to be our baseline to see what, for a bond, and then all of this happened. So again, if 500 people doesn't capture, because Lou Edwards, we paid them a lot of money and they told us this thing was going to pass and it failed.
Okay, any other comments? If not, everybody have a happy holiday and stay safe.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you all. Let's remember, we don't agree on everything, but let's at least agree that we're on the same team seeking a solution. That's my closing farewell, at which I'm going to press leave.